So we thought what we'd do today is we'd talk about our businesses. Yesterday when we were we talked about how you go into businesses, but today we thought we'd share how it showed out for us. So I think before we get too much into that, we should introduce ourselves. So Gabby, you want to go first? No, Gabby's not going to go first. Don is going first.
Don, you first. I need a moment.
You have a moment.
Thank you.
So my name's Don Deacy. I call myself many things in what I do. One of the things that I do is I am a coach. I tend to call it health and well-being, but really it's just 3 principles. So I could call it whatever I want, it would be 3 principles. But I guess the thing about me is, a long time ago I came across this concept of the portfolio lifestyle.
The what?
Portfolio lifestyle. And what that means is that you do many things. So I teach a martial art. I'm also a body worker, so I do acupuncture and bowing and things like that. And then I'm also a coach. Now I'd like to say that I woke up one day and said I wanted to be a coach. It just didn't happen that way. And that's what I love about this whole concept of the portfolio lifestyle. One of the things that I'd love to say to you today is, if you want to work in the principles, work in the principles. But don't think it has to be a certain way. See, when I was doing my initial training with the principles, I thought, I've got to be a full-time facilitator. Didn't even know what a facilitator was. I'm still not too sure. And I had to run it a certain way. I had to do intensives because that was what was being done. And that felt so uncomfortable for me, because that's not how my life works. I have different things I'm interested in. And I would say to you, don't follow anyone else's model, follow your own. Find what works for you. My model was, I will see people for a 2-hour appointment, because I started off at an hour and it wasn't enough. And then I would see them maybe once a week or maybe once a month, which is contrary to the intensive model. But that worked for me. And I also found that being involved in the martial arts and doing the body work added a dynamic element to my life that allowed me to see things differently as well. Because I felt, and again, this is purely Don, I felt that I didn't want to spend all day, every day, talking to people about mind, consciousness and thought. It's as simple as that. And during this session, I'd like to share with you some of the big mistakes I made as well. Just to say, look, it's okay to make mistakes, because I'm big on that. Don't have the courage to move forward. That's all it takes, because you're going to get things wrong. Get over it. That's life. But we can learn from others. We can learn from others. So if I share with you some of the things that I could stand up here and I could say, I did this, and he was unconscious on the floor, and then Don came along and suddenly he could dance, and yeah. It doesn't normally work out that way. So I don't know how you feel about that. I'll go off your gauge. Would that be okay for us to go along that line? Me and Gab had a little chat, and we thought we would kind of take in that direction. How are you doing, Don? You ready to roll?
I'm doing good.
Yeah? Okay.
Well, my name is Gabriela, and I'm just going to take questions. If you have a question, ask it. tell you a little bit. I learned about the principles in 1996. I was working for a nonprofit. I was working with children. I loved working with children. And I thought I was going to be a clinical psychologist. That's what I thought, yes. And then I went to this training and, see, like you make a plan, but then life shows up, right? And it just changes everything. I ended up working with a nonprofit for a while. Then the county of Santa Clara offered me a job. So I had a lovely job with the county of Santa Clara and San Jose for 10 years. And I talked about the principles morning, afternoon, evening, Saturdays, Sundays, Mondays, in Spanish, in English. And then at one point, like you, I just thought like, I was done in a little. So I just started playing with people, playing in jails, playing charades. I had this great joke with the guys in jail, and I told them that for the new upcoming people, I said, who's new? They would raise their hands, and I would say, I come from, I'm a dancer, I used to say, and I teach ballet. And there's a study that says that if you learn ballet, you do not come back to jail. So the county of Santa Clara, it has ballet classes. And so I'm asking all the new people to come to the front, and now we're going to do some pliés. And and these are like, some guys wear big tattoos, orange suits, boots, It's like, okay, put your heels together, stand up straight, lift your, I'm not a dancer. And they would, they would just kind of and they're like, are you kidding me? We had a great laughter. So I think for a while I took myself really seriously about, let's talk, teach, and then after a while it was just have fun. In 2010, when I'm about to have a life change, I always kind of have I've had this feeling in my stomach like butterflies, like, okay, there's something coming up here. And what I saw is that this was a beautiful job. This was a well-paying job. I had 5 weeks off. I could do anything I wanted to. I could work, split shifts or whatever. And it was time to let it go. It was just time. Not because I was burnt out or tired, it was just time. Some people thought I was crazy because it was a very lovely job. But when you're done, And I just stopped. I went to work with Amy Mills at the Center for Sustainable Change. We were co-directing for a little bit, and Amy is she's just brave, that woman, and she's honest. And so we were there for 6 months and said, I just don't feel like I want to do this anymore. And I said, well, I don't want to either. And somebody showed up and took the directorship of that nonprofit. And then I opened up through Change Consultants with Elise Coit. It was a partnership. And I had this butterfly thing happening, and after 2 years, I said, it's time for me to go. So it's evolved a lot, it's changed a lot. Currently, I'm just working with people in many different ways, mostly on Skype. I had a client, and I really liked this. They came to my house, we had breakfast together, went out to the garden, talked. She laid in the hammock, had some coffee, went to the beach, went for a drink, and I thought, oh, this is cool. I want to do this more, right? Just come, people, they can come spend the day, talk in between. I have been working on a book with Antonia, on a book for children. It should have come out 2 years ago, then last year, then this year. It's almost done. So I like the idea of just experimenting and letting, like all the sides of the prism come out, right? Like I'm not a writer, but I like creating and all of that. Sometimes I volunteer, and I will never give up a job if I want to do it. If I want to do it, and there's a lot of money, that's great. If there's little money, that's great. And if there's no money, that's great. So that's kind of my gauge. Do I really want to do this? Does this excite me? Is this going to be fun? Can I be of service? I like to have fun.
Yeah.
I like to have fun in what I do. I think that's it for now.
That's very good.
That's good? Okay.
You get the main stuff.
Good.
So the way Gabby shared there, beautiful. One of the big mistakes I made was I understood that no one's broken, from my training, and that there's nothing to fix. But then, when I started seeing people, I tried to fix them. How do you think that worked out for me? And it wasn't that I thought they were broken. It's thought that I thought that I had to teach them the principles. But they hadn't come to me to learn the principles. And one of the things that really, to their eternal credit, they stuck with me for a while, some of them did anyway. And I remember one time this woman came back and she said, "That last session was amazing." And I'm sort of looking at you, and she said, "It was something you said to me as I was walking out the door." And I looked at her all knowingly like, yes, that was planned. Couldn't remember bloody what I said at all. Could not remember it at all. But what I learned from that was, when I was trying to be Mr. 3Ps, I was getting nowhere. When I became Don, that's when I hit pay down. And I started changing. This one time, I remember this one. So we spent about half an hour arguing about what consciousness was. And I don't think I won. As a matter of fact, I was bloody confused when she left. So I quickly came to realise, look, don't talk about the 3 principles, because then you're making it a thing. And what I started to do was just be light. During the summer, I have a dog, and I'm a big dog man. I used to take my clients to the woods to walk the dog. And like you, I was thinking, I'm getting paid to walk my dog, man. This is wonderful, I just started playing with it and just being me. And being Don, that means some people don't get Don, they don't want Don, that's fine. It's not about me, it's about their perception of me. But I didn't want to be like anyone else, I wanted to be like me. So I would watch, these great teachers, and I think, wow, first of all, I've got to be like Gabby, or I've got to be like such and such. Well, how did that work out, man? Hey, I'm not Spanish, and I'm not a woman.
You don't.
So I modelled myself on Donald Trump. I can't understand why she's got a problem with that Hispanic woman. Anyway, so it just became about being playful, but also really, really, really fine-tuning my listening. Just getting into the present, just listening to people. And what I found was they told me what they needed. It was much easier to see. You see, my initial approach was, let's shower them with this information and they'll get what they need and walk away. And of course they're not getting that. And then the more I just talked, the more I just listened, it would become clearer what they're not seeing. And I would go through 3-4 sessions without ever mentioning mind, consciousness and thought. Those words were nixed, they weren't going to happen. What would happen then, there would be an evolution and people would say, well, they get curious. When they get curious, I would start to share. But it would be their agenda, not my agenda. And one of the things that I've seen is that sharing the principles doesn't have to be in a therapeutic relationship. People can go back to doing what they were doing before and still share the principles, probably more profoundly than the likes of me. And I think that's important for people when they come across me, because there is kind of an undertone, and again, this is my take, so please take that with a pinch of salt, but there is an undertone that I should be out there sharing it, because you're learning from people who are. But actually, we need people to work in offices, we need people to do all the other jobs. And that's where one of the things that occurred to me, and I could be totally wrong, and you know this way better than me, Sydney Banks must have talked to thousands of people in his lifetime on the principles. There ain't thousands of people out there sharing. Only a handful went on to share. But those people, if they were touched by him, and I'm sure some of them weren't, and that's got nothing to do with Sid, but we hear what we hear when we hear it, right? But a lot of them went back into the workplace if they were touched by it, and what good will they have done? That's even more powerful, I think, than what the likes of me does. So sharing the principles in business doesn't have to be someone coming as a consultant. It can be someone within the organisation, a fifth columnist of hope.
Do you guys have any questions?
I just want to say that's totally amazing, because it's the first time I've heard someone actually say that, but it's what I do. I have slight guilt that I'm not, a practitioner.
Right.
But I suppose I've got jobs in which it's quite easy to, if it's appropriate, share principles and it be within me so that my job is so much easier, what I do.
Wonderful.
It's made my day.
Job done, turn off the camera, we're out here.
That's a huge misunderstanding, isn't it? It's a huge misunderstanding. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to say that, Don, because I just thought that at the beginning as well, I'm going to be a coach, I'm going to teach this to everyone and everybody, but I'm still working my part-time in preschool, doing my little bit there, and you can see the rings on the water, and I'm doing whatever I can with the kids I meet and their parents and the colleagues I've got around me, just by being who I am. Not, sharing, like I'm going to tell you, blah, 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 but doing what I do. They see what I do, they see the effect of what I do, and I can see that they sort of change without me teaching anything. So I'm keeping that part-time job, and then I work part-time as an acupuncturist as well, and a teacher, and they come to me for acupuncture, but you still talk to your patients, don't you? So I don't talk about mind, consciousness and thought, but I listen to what they say, and I talk to them from a completely different place now than I used to do before meeting the principals. And the effect is amazing. The results are so much better, shorter therapeutic things.
Protocols.
And they come to me 2 or 3 times instead of 10 times, because the effect is so much better with their thinking in another place. And without sort of teaching or lecturing, I do my little bit there, and I feel quite comfortable with that. I don't really feel like going out having, weekend sessions and whatever. Now I'm planning to have maybe some meet-up groups or something like that where I live this week, and that's an idea. You have to do it if you like the idea, if it feels like fun doing it. I don't feel compelled doing it because I'm quite satisfied where I am. Doing my little bit, my little drop in the ocean, and I can see that it's spreading that way. And that's just as important, really.
That's beautiful. And I've got to say one thing, I had the same experience as you. So my treatment protocols, they got more effective, they got quicker. Also, when you were working with people, after about 5-6 sessions, job done. And all I could think of, this is a shit business model. because I had friends who were counsellors, right? And then you came to them with something, and they'd be signing you up for months and months of counselling.
For a year.
Yeah, year. I'm knocking it out in a month. I'm like, oh no, what have I done? But what happens is more and more people come, and you just get richer, don't you? You just get richer in yourself.
It's still satisfaction in a way.
Yeah.
And the thing that it's not me healing them, it's they sort of bringing out the well-being in them to let their body heal themselves in a way, or the mind heal themselves in a way. I'm just there really facilitating, opening up, showing them that this is possible. The tiny crack, and if that is placebo, well, that is placebo, it doesn't really matter. They get better, they feel better, and I sort of start the ball rolling, and then it just works by itself in a way. And that is, that's satisfying. Of course, it's not paying off so much money, but that doesn't really matter, does it?
No, you got time for other things.
Yeah, I can do other things as well. And not getting tied up so much with that. So it's satisfying, and I enjoy my work in a way that I couldn't do before. So and as well, as you said, this is fine for the moment. Who knows, next year or next month, I might be saying something else then. But at this moment, I'm quite content with having things just they are, actually.
Any other questions?
So when Rita mentioned a meet-up group, I started when I was very enthused about doing it, and I called it Now, and I made it clear that it was going to be for paying clients. No one's turned up yet. I actually got it on my mind. But I thought, this is great. I'm really enthused. This is going to be great. I'm going to change someone's life in the next week. It's still there. You can join if you like. Okay. I'm going to check and see if someone no one's joined it, and I'm not surprised. But I thought I'd give it a go, see if I really wanted to find out if it works. Give it a go, change someone's life overnight. It's not working, so I'll have to change it or scrap it.
And it's funny, isn't it? Because one of the things we do is, and Gabby's talked about this in the past, is we have expectations. And one thing I found out from my practice, because I thought Don's going to be dealing with stress and anxiety. That's going to be Don's thing. First person that walks through the door, well, not the first, but one of the first people, they came through the door to see me, sat down, didn't know anything about him. I said, so what's going on? What can I help you with? I want to kill myself.
Well, there you
So I'm there going, get the F out. I was my head was completely spinning. So I was going to be Mr. Mr. Relaxed and President and all the rest of that. I'm like, oh my God, I've got a suicide. And then I calmed down, and we started just talking. And he wasn't really, well, we know that. And I'm not going to go into the details of the case, but I'm just saying that wasn't what I wanted to walk through my door. And then what happened was I started getting a lot of gay clients. And I speak to Jen because I've got nothing on that at all. But I know nothing about the gay world. It's just not my world. And I really like these people. That sounds like I didn't like them before. Rewind, I've always liked them. But I found it very comfortable talking to them. And I said to my wife, Jane, what's going on here? Because I've got, a lot of these people coming in, I had no connection, I'm not advertising that. And she said, well, you're so stupid. I said, yeah, I know, but tell me what's going on. And she said, it's because you don't have any judgment on him. You got nothing on it. So people feel safe talking to you about it. Oh. But I never saw that. I never thought that would be a strand of my business. Do you understand what it is? So I really thought I was going to be Mr. Stress and Anxiety, because that was the big thing. Maybe 2% of what I've done has been stress and anxiety. It just hasn't worked out that way. But what I'm saying is, when you set out, or if you are setting out on it, be open. Be open to what walks through the door. Don't, yes, of course you've got to market a certain way and all the rest of that, but be open to what possibilities walk through.
I don't know if it's true that you have to market in a certain way. Not that I want to.
No, you don't.
I don't have a website. I don't have business cards. I really don't have a business plan. And I was talking to somebody and they said, you really need to have a website. I mean, that's like elementary lesson. And I was like, well, what I know of websites in the past is I've had websites in the past, and I know you have to tend to them, and I didn't want to tend to them. So, I mean, I'm sure it just didn't feel natural to me, okay? That's the point. That's the point. The point is that I know there are some people that have beautiful websites and it works for them beautifully. But to me, it felt very effortful, to be honest. It just felt effortful. It just was not something that I really, maybe it'll change, but so far it just hasn't been the natural. I haven't felt natural about that, So I often think of artists, like when artists are creating and they have these moments, like what's the name? Jones. She plays the piano. She's young, curly hair. Nora Jones. So, do you know who Nora Jones is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I like her a lot because she's really outside of what a lot of the other vocalists are doing. She doesn't have an image or a concept. She just is really doing what she enjoys. She gets on the piano and she sings and all that. I'm not against websites. That's not my point. But there is something about really listening to your own sense of creativity about moving forward. Amanda has a great band. I don't know if you've seen it. She's got this great VW bus, and it's a Serendipity, and it's red. And I saw it, and I was like, "Oh, that's really cool." And then somebody said, "Well, she does sessions there," and it's just interesting how I was like, "Well, maybe I can have a Serendipity, I mean, I'd like to copy you, Amanda, but just like emulate.
Franchise it.
I know. But the emulating part, right? Like, oh, let me talk like Dawn, let me do this, let me do that. And I think in the process, we just forget to listen inside because we get distracted with what everybody else is doing. And I think it's valuable to sit down and just really kind of spend some time with yourself to see what comes up. What comes up? Like, even how much should you charge? It's like, how much should I charge? How long should your sessions be? And everybody was like, well, the hour is this price, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I just feel bad about the hour. I don't want to do an hour because I don't want people to feel, okay, 55 minutes, and I don't want to feel like that. So I think there is this guidance, internal guidance that we have. Also, I have discovered that there's some things that I'm not good at and that I do not want to do. Right? So I was like trying to do them, and I was like, just hire somebody. Just hire somebody to develop this. Hire some help in the office. Let's just use our common sense here, too, right? I want to talk about money with you guys, because I think money is something that we don't talk about in these things. It appears, sometimes it appears that people are making a living doing this full time. When I started learning about these principles in 1996, I was working for a nonprofit, and there were some people that were doing, consultants, okay? And I was going to quit my job, and I was going to do this as a consultant. And one of my mentors, her name is Faye Sanford, she worked for the Department of Alcohol and Drug Services, talked to me and she said, Gab, before you do that, let me tell you, these people that you're seeing that are consultants, they have a backup. Because some of them have husbands, or some of them have another income, or because there is a savings. I just want you to know that, because the job of a consultant, for those of you that have been consultants in the past, you know that it's ebbs and flows, right? Like sometimes money comes, sometimes it's a little shorter. And I'm very grateful that she said that. I am very grateful, because I just was looking at everyone and I thought, well, it looks like they're doing well, right? So let me just jump in there with 2 feet. Now, it may work for some people. It just may work, right? That they are super business oriented and entrepreneurs, and it could work. But I want to tell you that at least in my job, there are times where I have clients, and there are times where it's a little quieter. So the quality of my life, just physically, financially, is hugely sponsored by my husband's finances. And I want to tell you that. Because it may appear that, people are doing well. Let me just kind of jump in there. And I think there's something to know about that, about the finances of a business, about just paying rent, buying food. A lot of little girls go and take dance classes, but not all of them become ballerinas, professional ballerinas that get paid. And then some of them become professional ballerinas, but they don't get paid a lot of money, right? So I think there's a common sense element in this. Amanda, you have a puzzled look in your face. Do you want to say that? Do you want to say something? No?
No, I just love what you say there about I love what you said about
So, at one point, like when I was working for the county, I was able to support myself financially. Like, I could have done that and have done that. Today, I would be eating a lot less. If I had to, I would have to be very careful. At this moment, that might change. That might change. I also have learned that there are some people that I will charge a lot of money because they can afford it and because it makes sense. And then there are other people that I just know that it makes sense not to charge them anything. And then there are some that, it's kind of like the middle of the road. I'm not totally clear, to be honest, yet, about, I'm getting more and more clear, but how to charge companies. I ask for help, I reach out, because there are times where I'm just not real sure what to do, So I just wanted to tell you that. I just wanted to tell you that I would probably have to have, at this point, a second job to make ends meet, or something different,
Thank you so much for your honesty about that.
For sharing that.
I went through the facilitator training, and came out the other end and felt like I needed to ditch my whole life plan and start again. And I'm the sole source of income in my home. And it took me a while to work out I wasn't prepared to destabilize myself in that way. And actually, I continued being homeopath. But the whole theme of my business has changed, and homeopathy, it was actually you, Don, that kind of almost gave me permission to realise that I could use homeopathy as a shop window. And when they came to me, they got way more than homeopathy. But there's not, I don't think there's enough people working with the principles being really honest, like you just told me.
Yes. Yeah, I would tell you that because I think, I had a dear friend of mine, and he went full force, and he struggled for 3 or 4 or 5 years, right? I know there are some people that, have like no concern about, saying, I'm going to charge you $10,000 to hug me, right? Some people do that. I'm not talking about hug, but And so, I've gotten insecure about that. It's like, okay, well, Don is charging $10,000 to give hugs, and I only charge $350, so maybe I should charge 10 or something. And what I notice is that when I look out, you can look and you can learn, right? From others, of course. But at the end, the decisive factor about how much I charge, the length of what I do, who I work with, who's my client, I find that it turns out better if the final decision comes from inside of me. Even if I have to turn down business. And the problem I have found is that I get caught up in my thinking and in my ego a lot.
But if you're honest, then by default you're authentic in what you're doing. And I found the universe has supported that. And certainly maybe it's about my life circumstances and that I have more space in my life to be able to work much more now than I did pre the principles. But since the principles, my business has just gone vroom.
Great. Great.
And remember, what's happening today has no reflection on what's going to happen tomorrow. So I may be charging a certain rate for someone today, and by the way, the £10,000 a hug thing, 20% discount for Viva people. But what I'm saying is it doesn't mean anything. I've given my position, given myself permission to be very flexible, very adaptable in what I do. And you know, it's perfectly possible tomorrow I may never work as a 3Ps coach again. I may just decide I don't want to do that. And I love what you said, because you know what I've seen, and this is just again my observation, neediness is the ultimate client repellent. It really is. As soon as you start going, oh, I need clients, it comes over, and people, your agenda when you're working with them isn't going to be that good. You know, the thing I love about the portfolio lifestyle is exactly what you said, because you just said it in a much more elegant way. If you've got several streams of income, it takes the pressure off. You know, what I've personally found that there's times where the 3P stuff isn't bringing in a lot of money, but it's just at that time the acupuncture side might pick up. And I always had this one strand that wasn't a big earner, but it was enough to keep the wolf from the door of the club. So when I was working with people, I didn't have that neediness. And I could say to someone, and I often did, oh, we'll do it for free. If you haven't got the money, I really want to work with you. But then other times, of course, that wasn't going to leave my mouth. I was going to get some money for it. And you know, one of the things as well is, by the nature of any community, people will always tell you when things are going well.
Yes. Amen.
And you know, you've got to be careful you don't get caught up in the hype of that as well.
Yes.
You live your day, you live your
Yes.
life, you make it your, because you have a unique aspect to this that no one else has. And you bring that forward. And that's your business.
Amen. Hallelujah.
You have been healed.
Here.
Yeah, let's go to do that.
You know, this is so true. So true. Because, you know, we get excited, right? We get excited. It's like, oh, you know, this last year, this past, 2 years actually, I've been working with this gentleman. You know, we're doing great. You know, he has his business. We work together. It's wonderful, right? And it's just like, we get enthusiastic about that. It's like, well, let me tell you about what's possible, right? So we work on Skype. He has his clients. Whenever he thinks something can work, then he calls me, hey, can you do it? Absolutely. It's good money. It's fantastic. Yes. Okay. So I'm sometimes compelled to share that. So it appears like, oh, well, you know, here you go. It's like Facebook, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Facebook. But there's another reality. But there's a different reality also, you know? There are people that have committed their lives to this in all, like 100%, that at the end of their lives, they had very, very, very little finances and life was a struggle. That's happened, right? And so it's just really nice to be really willing. I mean, I like talking about this. I like really kind of being honest about this, because then, because it's nice and you're not like caught in the smoke of things, you know. And I mean, some people are able to make a living and pay all their steaks and bread and roof tiles from this. This is true. Some of us have done that in the past. Some of us kind of cover the ham and the bread, but somebody else has to pay for the wine and the water, right? I don't know. But I want to tell us a funny story, because there was a couple of years ago when I was like, that's it, I'm going to work with business people, and this is what I'm going to do, that's going to be my people, because I live in the Silicon Valley, and there are like 1 million people here, and like a lot of companies and all this stuff, right? And I had set my mind to this, like that was my target. So I was at this restaurant, it was a Friday night, and I'm sitting with Will, my husband, and at a bar, eating oysters and the whole thing, and then I hear that the person seated right next to me is in charge of training for a huge company in the Silicon Valley. And I'm like, oh. Now this is Friday night, 8 o'clock, okay? This man looks beat, and he looks like super tired, right? But my target comes up, right? It's like, oh, well, how much more perfect. Not only HR, the training. I mean, it's like a huge international global company, right? So I noticed myself kind of just like, I'm with Will like this, but I hear this, so I'm like, oh, well, hold on, let me just be more neutral. Right? And I'm about to enter a conversation, and this man looks beat down from the, this week. And I notice I'm trying to connect with him because I just heard what position he holds, right? And by divine intervention, I hear, shut up, give him a break, it's like he's just enjoying a glass of wine on a Friday. And I was so pleased with myself that I didn't attack him the way that I was hoping to a few moments before, right? And so, I went and talked to somebody that was very high up at HP with an agenda. And it did not go so well, right? And I was like, God dang it, my opportunity to get into HP and blah, 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 blah. Maybe I need more courses in this, maybe I need that, maybe I need to go get a master's in, I don't know.
Marketing, sales presentation.
Sales presentation. There you go. And you know what, for somebody else, that's what they might do. I just really, at this point, I'm learning more and more how to really rely on me and use my common sense and learn from others, right? You can learn from others, but it's much more enjoyable to develop kind of like your own flavor of business. And I think anything is possible.
Yeah. It's being open to yourself, isn't it? It's listening to yourself as well. Because do you remember that lottery ad with the big finger will come down? It's you. Do you remember that? And I can see myself walking along, opportunities coming down. It's you, and I'm so full of my head. Get out of the way! I'm looking somewhere else. It's just being open to seeing what's there, and you can't know what you'll see tomorrow. You don't know what you're going to see in the next minute, but you certainly won't know what you're going to see tomorrow. It's just being that bit open.
That's great. You were going to say something. You wanted to say something.
I would not say that everything is possible.
Okay.
I could define it. I'm more than 20 years self-employed by myself, and I have mountains and the valleys. And since 10 years, or for 10 years, I would say it's more mountains than valleys. Yes, and I changed my profession. And I learned, or I met many guys. They told me how to sell things, stocks and bonds. And as I was younger, I believed them because it seems that they had a big car, maybe rented,
Hired for the day.
Or stolen.
Or stolen.
The police escort.
I don't know if they are from Poland now.
Oh my God.
And yeah, it was an outside in, and they always said make plans, and you have to have a goal and then break it down and to the day, and so you know what do you have all the days, each day. It nothing. It never worked for me. Yeah, and the other said, "Oh, it works for me," and you. And maybe it worked for some, not for me. And so my conclusion now is something is possible for some, but not for all. And now I change, and now I feel better. I do my way, or with good influences, and 3P helped me. I'm not a 3P coach. And that is what I wanted to say when you said it's possible, always possible for everyone. I don't think so.
Can I answer that? So yes is the answer. And the reason why I say that is because anything is possible. Anything is possible.
Yeah.
But a lot of things are not probable.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
And there is a difference between the two. And you know, in the Western world, we're always banging on about free will. And if you choose to do something, you will achieve it. Yeah. Well, mind you, DT just showed that anything's possible. But the point is this: what if an element of free will there's an element of free will that we're overlooking? What if free will isn't about what you choose to do? What if there was an element of free will where you choose not to do something? And that could be not believing your thinking, as real as it looks. So in business, if things are going low, I'm not the kind of person that goes, whoop-de-doo, I'll go to the park. If I have a client who doesn't show up, I'm not sending angels to their mirror. I'm not, because that's my time. But I have learnt through the 3 Ps that I'm a much more effective businessman if I use my free will, and that is not to believe my thinking. And that makes a lot more things possible. Because there has been times when I have been frightened to do something, and if I had followed my thinking, I would not have done it. And when I did do it, it was amazing, because I was 100% wrong in my thinking. And you know, I've found that is quite a common theme with me. I could be 100% wrong. So if we believe something is possible, it doesn't mean it's probable we'll do it. But you know, a lot of things are possible, aren't they?
You know what it reminded me of this is, I mean, when I hear that, I think we go to, well, then everybody can make $1 million. I think that's the assumption, right? If anything is possible, then everyone can make $1 million or $1 billion or whatever. I forgot right now what I was going to say. Oh, but it reminded me of, did you see Martian? Is it Martian or Mars? That movie of that guy that ends up being stuck in Mars? Matt Damon?
Oh, I heard about it.
Is it Martian? Well, anyway.
Mars.
Mars? Okay. Well, anyway, this guy gets stuck in Mars, and he has no food, and a whole bunch of things that go wrong, right? And he has to grow food, and he has like no food. however, and he's like, like, okay. And he comes up with an idea of how to grow food, okay? That's totally, I'm not going to tell you how because it's a great movie, but it's totally like when he started doing what he started doing, I'm like, that's brilliant. That was brilliant, right? And so anyway, of course it's a movie, right? Of course it's a movie, but what I got from the whole movie is she really should have died like within the first 24 hours, but he kind of kept on not assuming that was the truth. And so, because he didn't assume that was the truth, there were new ideas that he had that came up that kept on showing me how creative we are as human beings. And I think that's part of the point, part of our point, right? I mean, think about it, like 20 years ago, I don't know how old you are, but when I was a little girl, there were no cell phones, right? I could have never imagined when I was 15 that we were going to be operating, all of us, with a phone. All of us have a phone in this room, right? Who would have imagined that? Right? I mean, I can get a check, take a copy, or like a photo, that's a miracle, and then somehow it gets transported to my bank, it recognizes it, and it makes a deposit. That's sort of like unbelievable in my head, like even 10 years ago, right? And that's what I mean when I said anything is possible. I'm not saying that all of us are going to get $1 million, but it's just kind of remarkable. That was my question. Well, what if this intelligence that we're talking about, that is mine, that it is who we are, what if that's true? That it's alive and that it has lots of prisms. It's kind of exciting.
It is, isn't it?
And that common sense is part of that. So, I don't know what time it is. Is it time for us?
I think
Time
it
for us
is.
to sleep?
We're getting
Sorry.
the cutoff.
Okay. I apologize. Sorry. So anyway, if you ever had any question, you can send me an email. I will get to you eventually. I'm sure that's true for you too.
Yeah. Personally, if I was sending you, it would be to you. But
and we promise to be as honest as possible
yeah,
about this.
yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.